website right now and download my free course on alternate picking mastery. It contains 5 essential exercises that will take you to alternate picking mastery faster than you can imagine. And then I've included my method of how to lay out a practice plan in just 1 to 2 minutes that will absolutely boost your results like nothing you ever tried before. So go download it right now. It's free. Hey, should you practice with distortion or a clean sound? We tend to make up rules much of the time because rules allow us to not think too much, right? So we make up a rule and then we don't have to think about what to do. We just have that rule and we can adhere to the rule and then we'll get results. But we can't, we have to be intelligent about it. And that's why I got this question from a bloke out there who wondered, when should you practice with and without distortion? Because some people set up rules out there, right? They say, okay, you should never practice with distortion, right? But why? First of all, the first point, of course, that you already know is that the guitar is the coolest instrument in the world because it's many instruments. If you have distortion on it, it will totally react in a completely different way than if you have a clean sound. You can do pinch harmonics, the muted strokes sound completely different. You can add compression, you can have delay, which makes everything last longer when you play. So whenever you add something to your sound, you start playing differently. You start doing different things. So if you were playing a violin, everything would be the same every single time. But when you're playing a guitar, you have to be very conscious about what style of music do you want to play and what sound do you want to have on your guitar. If you play fusion or if you play metal or any other style and you use multiple sounds, you should practice with multiple sounds. Whenever you practice phrasing, whenever you practice using the sound, playing the instrument, having the notes come out right, you should practice with the sound you intend to perform with. And that even goes for the volume. Many times I've been practicing for months and then playing a gig, and then suddenly you crank that amp up, and it reacts totally different. I'm sure you tried this. Yeah, you go for 4, 5, 6, 10 times the volume you usually have, and the whole thing of the whole responsiveness of the instrument changes completely. And it just, throws you off. So right? So you should even try to practice as often as you can with performance volumes. So that's very important when you practice phrasing. But when you practice technique, what we want to do there is allow the brain, for instance, alternate picking, hammer-ons and pull-offs. What we want to do there is allow the brain to listen for any inconsistencies in your technique, any pick strokes that are not accurate, any pick strokes that are not as high or forceful or whatever as the others, right? You want to hear every single detail, and not necessarily consciously, but unconsciously at least. You have to give the brain a chance to evaluate on what you're doing. So when you're practicing, what you're basically doing is you do something, you get feedback, and you take what you did and hold it up against your expectations of how it should be. That's what the brain does all the time. So you pick a note and the brain says, was that good? Right? And if you have a lot of distortion on your sound, what happens is that it conceals the little inconsistencies, of course, because what distortion does is the same thing compression does. It takes a weak pick stroke and pushes up the volume, and it takes a high or strong pick stroke and, pushes it down a little bit. That's why it's easier to pick consistently and get a consistent sound when you have distortion on. And it seems to muddy up the whole picture. So it's harder to hear, it's harder for your brain to get feedback when you're practicing. The same thing goes for fretting chords, for doing every other thing. When you are training yourself to do just the technique part, that training where you do thousands and millions of repetitions over and over and over again, you want to establish the right action, feedback, evaluation system so you get the most accurate and the most amount of feedback. And that's why also when we talk about alternate picking, that I recommend not playing any notes as well as playing notes, because the strings feel differently when you're not playing. When you're just muting and you just focus on your right hand, right, for once. And then you introduce, playing notes as well, so your brain gets used to playing the string when it's fretted, which is a different feeling. And we're talking about so tiny little things here, so that we need to be conscious about this, because this is so minute, right? But so when you practice picking, when you practice accuracy, and and you practice playing different chords, right? You want to hear every single detail, so play with a clean, crisp sound with no delay, nothing on it, no compression, nothing that can impair your brain's ability to hear what's actually going on, what you're doing. If you do that, you'll get a natural feedback that is naturally going to have the brain adjust all the time. If you're practicing technique and training yourself with distortion, there's no feedback, or the wrong feedback, and the brain is going to go, hey, we're doing great. So you're not learning as fast and as hard as you could if you used. And I'm not saying that you should always be able to play anything cleanly as you can play with distortion. So if you do a run with distortion, like right, then you should be able to totally play the same, without the distortion, because who gives a hoot, right? Distortion allows you to do other things. So why not play the instrument, have the effects, do whatever, to perform. But when you're training and practicing, you want to do a clean sound. Unless you're practicing playing with distortion. Unless you're practicing phrasing. Right? When I've been in the studio recording, many people have asked me, can you just play it with a clean sound, then I can put on the distortion afterwards? But I can't, because it's not the same instrument, right? You want to play a... Listen to how dead my pinch harmonics are. There's no feedback, right? Right? Let me just play the same thing with distortion here. So of course, when you practice phrasing, do it with the sound you need when you perform. And if you're using multiple sounds, use every sound every single day. When you're practicing technique and you want to establish that feedback system, whenever it's chords, technique, picking, hammer-ons and pull-offs for that matter as well, anything, sweep picking, practice with a clean sound and then enjoy the results with your favorite performing sound afterwards.
Subscribe for more free videos. Do it. Do it now. Do it.